June 28, 1914. The assassination in Sarajevo of the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne was a long-awaited pretext for the Triple Alliance and the Entente to start a war, which, in the opinion of both sides of the conflict, should have more fairly divided the spheres of influence in the world. As soon as active hostilities began, it became clear to all the great powers that this war was not like all the wars that were before it, and therefore not one of their parties would be able to quickly win. A heavy bloody confrontation began, so the refusal of the Italian kingdom to start hostilities against the Entente became a very unpleasant surprise for Germany and Austria-Hungary. However, very soon the Central Powers managed to find a replacement for their unreliable ally by persuading the Ottoman Empire to start hostilities against the Entente. The entry of the Ottoman Empire into the war on the side of the Central Powers was a very unpleasant surprise for the Entente. The fact is that the Ottoman Empire blocked the straits and thereby disrupted the main communications route between the Russian Empire and its allies. In addition, the army of the Ottoman Empire posed a threat to the Russian oil fields in the Caucasus and the British in Iran. It should be mentioned that by the beginning of the First World War, Iran was going through a period of decline, and despite the fact that the state officially remained neutral, its territory was under the control of the Russian and British empires. The northern part of Iran fell into the sphere of influence of the Russian Empire, while the British Empire was able to establish control over the southern part of Iran and obtain exclusive rights to develop Iranian oil fields. The British and Russian garrisons in Iran were small, which of course the Central Powers rushed to take advantage of. The German command planned to create a united Islamic front, which was supposed to declare jihad to the Entente. According to the plan, the Islamic front would be able to pull back part of the Entente forces, and consequently improve the position of the Central Powers on the eastern and western fronts. The problem was that it was impossible to create a united Islamic front without the participation of Iran, so the main task of the Central Powers at the initial stage was to oust the British and Russian troops from the region. Almost immediately after the entry into the war, the 3rd and 5th Infantry Divisions of the Ottoman Army, together with the Kurdish cavalry detachments, invaded Iranian territory and began moving towards the city of Urmia. It should be mentioned that the Russian Empire controlled its part of Iran with the help of the Persian Cossack Brigade, which consisted of the local population trained by Russian military instructors, so the Russian Empire did not place its own large garrisons in Iran. Taking advantage of the overwhelming numerical advantage, the Ottomans managed to quickly establish control over the city of Urmia and continue the offensive. The Ottoman offensive turned out to be quite successful, since the few Russian detachments and the Persian Cossack Brigade were unable to organize serious resistance. Already on January 14, 1915, the Ottomans, having broken the resistance of the local garrison, managed to establish control over the city of Tabriz. Since the threat of an attack on the Caucasian oil fields as a result of the Ottoman invasion seriously increased, the Russian command urgently sent the 4th Caucasian Corps to Iran, which consisted of both the Cossack cavalry and Armenian volunteer battalions. The transfer of additional forces immediately gave a result, and already on January 30th, the Russian detachments, having pushed back the Ottomans, regained control of Tabriz. In April, the Ottoman army under the command of Halil Bey regrouped and attempted to capture Tabriz again, taking advantage of the fact that only the 1st Armenian Volunteer Squad under the command of Andranik Ozanian was in the city. The Ottoman command failed to realize its plans, since the Armenian squad was able to organize the defense of the city and wait for the main Russian army to approach, which with a swift attack threw the Ottoman troops back from Tabriz. Taking advantage of the success, the Russian army under the command of General Nazarbekov continued the counteroffensive. On April 15, near the city of Dilman, the first major battle took place on the Persian front. The Ottoman army was defeated, thanks to which the Russians managed not only to regain control over the city of Urmia, but also to completely oust the enemy from Iran. In the summer of 1915, by order of the command, a significant part of the Russian detachments were transferred to the German front, because of which the Russian corps in Iran were forced to go on the defensive. In turn, the Ottomans, having decided to take advantage of the weakening of the Russian army, formed a strike force under the command of Abdul Karim Pasha. According to the plan drawn up, This group intended to bypass the Russian positions from the north and thereby encircle them. To counter the Ottoman strike force, a strike force was formed from the reserve units under the command of General Baratov. The counterattack of the Baratov detachment did not allow the Ottomans to realize their plan. The forces of Abdul Karim Pasha were driven back and began to take up defensive positions to hold back the onslaught of the Russian troops. In the fall of 1915, the work of the agents of the Central Powers yielded results. They managed to win over the Persian gendarmerie, which, having raised an uprising, was able to capture the cities of Shiraz, Yazd and Kerman. In the vicinity of the city of Hamadan, detachments of the Persian gendarmerie clashed with the Persian Cossack brigade. During the battle, the gendarmes succeeded, having enticed part of the Persian Cossacks to their side, to disarm the remaining brigade. In turn, the Russian command, having lost its main instrument of influence in Persia, formed a cavalry corps led by Baratov to regain control of Iran. On October 30, 1915, Baratov's corps landed in the port of Anzali and established control over the city. Baratov's detachments launched an offensive and already on November 11 established control over the city of Kazvin, after which they continued to move towards the cities of Qom and Hamadan. Since the Persian gendarmerie was unable to resist the regular Russian army already in December 1915, Baratov established control over the city of Hamadan and continued to move towards the city of Kermanshah. At this time, the British detachments under the command of Townsend were surrounded in El Kut and the Russian command received a request for help. After agreeing on the details of the plan to deblockade El Kut, Russian detachments under the command of Baratov began to move towards the city. Having overcome the resistance of the Ottoman detachments, as well as the Persian gendarmes, the Russian army on February 16, 1916 established control over the city of Kermanshah. Continuing the offensive, Baratov's cavalry corps by the end of April was able to establish control over the city of Kanakin, which was located at a distance of 100 miles from Baghdad. Having captured the city of Kanakin, Baratov received news that on April 29 the British garrison of El Kut capitulated, so a further offensive deep into Mesopotamia was pointless. Meanwhile, the Ottomans, taking advantage of the inaction of the British army, which was accumulating forces to resume the offensive deep into Mesopotamia, were able to use detachments of their 6th Army to attack the Baratov's corps. In July 1916, the Ottoman 6th Army, hastily transferred from the vicinity of El Kut to Baghdad, launched an offensive. In turn, Baratov's corps, under the onslaught of a numerically superior enemy, was forced to begin a retreat. Thus, the Ottomans were able to again invade the territory of Persia and establish control over the cities of Kermanshah, Qom and Hamadan. Taking advantage of the retreat of the Russian army under the onslaught of the Ottomans in November 1916, a coup d'état took place in Tehran, but Ahmad Shah Qajar managed to elude the conspirators and take refuge in the Russian embassy. Some time later, Baratov's detachments arrived in Tehran, who quickly suppressed the uprising and restored the power of Ahmad Shah Qajar. While Baratov was engaged in suppressing the uprising, the offensive of the 6th Ottoman Army ran out of steam, after which the Russian army regrouped and launched a counteroffensive. The Ottoman 6th Army was unable to hold back the counteroffensive of the Russian cavalry corps, and by December 1916, Baratov's detachments were able to regain control over the cities of Qom and Hamadan. In turn, the Ottomans took up defense, but the Russian army managed to break the resistance of the enemy and in March 1917 to establish control over the city of Kermanshah, and on April 4 again invade Mesopotamia and occupy the city of Kanakin. By the end of the year, a joint offensive by the Russian and British armies against Baghdad and Mosul was planned, but these plans were not destined to come true. The fact is that after the February Revolution, Order No. 1 was issued, which destroyed the principle of unity of command in the Russian army and launched the process of its self-destruction. In October, a second revolution took place in Russia, after which the Russian army was ordered to immediately stop hostilities. Despite the fact that the Russian army unilaterally withdrew from the war, and by the beginning of 1918 left the territory of Persia, the Ottoman Empire did not make new attempts to invade Iran. The fact is that by this time the Ottoman troops in the region were experiencing huge problems with the supply of ammunition and food. In addition, the British managed to significantly increase the size of their corps in Mesopotamia, which is why the Ottomans had to concentrate all available forces to try to hold Mosul. This ended the fighting on the Persian front. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe to my channel and click on the bell so as not to miss new videos.